And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. What an honor it is to have Shin-Blade, wrestling journalist, music journalist, just an excellent journalist. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Music journalist, wow. I wish I was one.
Well, you just interviewed Dwelle, who's a tremendous neo-soul artist.
Yes,
And,
I did in Kevin Jackson. That was last night in Baltimore, Soundstage. So there's pretty bit more to come. I'm trying to venture into that entertainment category, aside from wrestling.
well, you know your music and your wrestling, which is one of the reasons we get along well.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I had two places I'd want to be on a Saturday night, it would either be a great music concert or a wrestling event, assuming it's a quality wrestling event.
Yes, I've been to some wrestling events where it doesn't drive. It makes you look down on your smartphone like all night.
Yeah.
But again, I try to be positive and give like advice whenever I can. I don't know everything in the business, but I try to get to the point where entertaining the fans. And then there's some events where they want to do too much in high spots and
Too much, like 18 matches with ticket sellers. The kids don't even have gear. They look like kids from the high school, and they're doing 37 high spots, no psychology. And by the time the quality match comes on 3 hours later, you're numb already. I mean, I talk to indie promoters, and I've been around this forever. I mean, forever. And like they listen with one ear, but in their head, they're still going to push their cousin, their buddy, their girlfriend,
Yeah.
and they're really not absorbing what you're saying a lot of the times.
Well, a lot of times in wrestling, let alone entertainment, you have to know psychology. So even if your relative, cousin, neighbor, wife's baby mother or whatever,
Yeah.
who wants to get into business, if they're not connecting with the fans, don't put them in. They don't deserve to be in that main event.
Here's psychology. If you miss one spot, don't stop like a deer in the headlights and look befuddled in the middle of the ring.
We've seen that before.
We've seen that many
We've
times.
seen that many times, and it just looks insane. I mean, not to pull the Connecticut wrestling out, but that happened to Jericho just recently, which he did improvised it pretty well. He didn't stop. He knew what was going on, and he stopped the match with his integrity.
Yeah, Adrian Neville, for those who don't know, I believe he fractured his foot.
Somewhere like that, and one thing about online, they said Jericho broke kayfabe in order to stop the match, which I don't think that was breaking kayfabe. Breaking kayfabe is like you shut your character down completely for the other guy, and you stop it. Pushing the referee when you're a heel is completely great. You get yourself disqualified throughout the match.
What was broken was the guy's foot.
Yeah.
That's what was really broken.
Yes, it was, and people just say he broke kayfabe. Oh,
Okay, since we're on that, and we're both wrestling people, here's my point of contention. These guys, they're not superheroes. They're not action figures. If you're doing insane spots night after night after night, and a lot of these guys are working 200 nights a year,
yes.
at some point you're going to break. It happened to Rey Mysterio again and again and again. And any of these flyers, at some point you're going to land wrong, or just the wear and tear on your body, something's going to give. And the WWE, the past couple of months, has had one major injury after another. I mean, the biggest names that they have, one after another. At some point, you just have to say, it's not worth it. And I understand it's almost like an assembly line. Who's bigger than Steve Austin or The Rock? They leave. There's always somebody else.
Yes.
So that's one way of looking at it. Speaking of that, what I find amazing as an old school fan, WWE will advertise an event and not even tell you what the matches are sometimes.
Yes, a lot of promotions would do that, and the thing that's the problem was what you said, 200, 300 days a year, and they do these high spots, blowing their knees out, CTE concussions, and now it's a big case with concussions in sports, which I even cringe on certain spots where, like somebody lands on their head, they land on their feet, which the bones can rupture on the ankles, and I cringe upon that because it's 200 nights a year. It's not 52 nights a year like the indie wrestling talent where they can do that.
When I was a kid, a guy like Pat Patterson would peak at age 35 or 40. He'd come into WWF, he'd main event, he'd be the number one heel at 35 or 40. Today, a lot of careers are over by then. When I was a kid, you'd see guys who were in their 50s who were still main event guys because they weren't doing the insane high spots, the career ending. So here's my big question, and I'm not directing this at any one promotion in particular, but at what point, what is the line with, is it the athlete's fault for doing something dangerous, or is it the promotion's fault for encouraging it? Because, for example, tables, ladders, and chairs. There's no other business where you would expect your employees to fall off of a huge ladder.
Yes.
And I mean, gee, the guy got hurt, like big surprise. So where is it the promotion's fault, and where is it the wrestler's responsibility for just doing something he shouldn't have done?
Well, for me, I think the wrestler's responsibility, I think, is half and half. Because the promotions wants to make money, they want the audience to be engaged into the product and the matches. Now, the athletes that are in there, they have to have the audience attention as well and hold up to them so they can move up in the ranks and make more money. And the demand gets to the point where everybody expects a high spot even in the first match of the night. Now, I agree with first, second, and third match of the night, you have to outshow the main event. That's what your job is to do. What they say, being a curtain jerker. Now, the main event, you don't have to do much because your name, your name
the prelim guys are not supposed to outshine the main event. The prelim guys are supposed to warm you up to get to the main event.
Well, I have that attitude where, show off, and just like Jerry Lee Lewis with the piano, he couldn't close out. Instead, it was Chuck Berry, and he did a performance. You know about the story. He did a performance where he burnt the piano, walked to Chuck Berry, and said, "Follow that."
I'll tell you something funny. Even in the 90s, I would see these guys on oldies shows, and Jerry Lee Lewis would be like, I'm the headliner. Even though Little Richard or whoever else is on the bill, there was still this competitive, interesting. But wrestling in 2016, as somebody who's been around it for quite a while, I care about the wrestler's health. I care that on a rainy day when they're 40, 45, 50, these guys are going to be in tremendous pain. And when I see them do something like fall off a huge ladder, I'm kind of like, is it worth it? It's a 1 second pop that may be forgotten at some point. I've seen ECW guys doing autograph signings where there's very few fans there. Is it worth it to cripple yourself? There have been wrestlers that have ended up in wheelchairs. I mean,
the wrestler, the VFW Hall scene.
Yeah. I mean, the wrestler rang true, and unfortunately, look at poor Kamala, Dynamite Kid. This business will take its physical toll on you, and
we're blessed that Daniel Bryan made it out. Or should I say Bryan Danielson, he made it out on his own terms. And he didn't want to leave, but to the point where he could at least walk away.
And how many guys did not get to main event or WrestleMania, did not get to make big money, who end up with lifelong injuries? And Steve Rosano out in the Pacific Northwest, this guy destroyed his body. There have been many wrestlers who, did not end well physically or mentally with multiple concussions, a lot of them. So I think what happens is a young guy who's hungry, they're going to take these risks. They're not thinking, that one day they're going to wake up and they're going to be in their 50s like myself. Because when you're in your 20s, you're not thinking like that. And what is the price that you're going to pay for that amazing high spot or that amazing bump or whatever the case may be? It may be too much. It may really be too much of a sacrifice, especially on an indie show that a couple of hundred people maybe are seeing. I've been to indie shows, there's 30 people. Is it worth hurting yourself? Like permanent injury?
And they call it faithful, which I agree with the sentiment, but there's also, we live in a society where it's right here, right now. I mean, nowadays, in the days of wrestling, I remember as a kid, there were two guys that never set foot in the same ring for about 6 to 8 months, and when they did, it was an explosion. I mean, they did the house shows, just to know how to work with each other, but on TV, you just never saw them in the ring, and when you did, your blood pressure went up. Like, what are we gonna do now? This is gonna be great, and now it's to the point where is that if you don't do it this week, you're gonna lose fans. You don't do it next week, you're gonna lose fans. So a lot of people don't appreciate that slow build. I love the slow build. And I like the fact that now that this WrestleMania in Texas, that Cena, Orton, our friend Cesaro, which I don't count in this list, among many others, won't be wrestling because they're hurt. So it's time for the young guys to step up and show Vince McMahon what they're made of. Now Triple H is doing great with NXT. His NXT event on Friday night sold out. WrestleMania hasn't.
Well, it's also in a smaller venue.
It is? I thought it was Texas Stadium.
NXT? I don't believe so. I don't think so.
I may have to fact check.
I don't think NXT's got to do 70, 80, 90,000 tickets.
Or unless they tarped off Texas Stadium or...
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because they were in Texas Stadium when they introduced that Texas Stadium was going to be WrestleMania 32.
I think the NXT lineup is equal, if not superior, to the WrestleMania. Nakamura, to me, is the finest wrestler in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I think Nakamura is amazing. In fact, what I question is, you have WrestleMania, which is clearly the biggest wrestling show of the year.
Wrestle Kingdom?
Wrestle Kingdom is probably the second biggest show of the year. New Japan Pro Wrestling, where they had AJ Styles against Nakamura, which was amazing.
Oh, my goodness.
Amazing. If I were Vince McMahon or Triple H or whoever, I would be putting on the absolute best possible show, which would be Nakamura against AJ Styles, which could be Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage level great, or Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat level great, and they chose not to, and I don't quite understand that. Nakamura is not on the WrestleMania card. He's the finest wrestler in the world, and arguably, at bare minimum, top 5 or 10 in the world. I mean, how is this guy not on the WrestleMania show?
Well, I was thinking that WrestleMania 33 is all about timing. So
timing. The guy's a world-class athlete.
But also, there's world-class athletes in wrestling, and then there's WWE athletes. Because the one thing that I was so afraid about with AJ Styles when he debuted at the Royal Rumble, that a certain number of the WWE audience wouldn't know who he is or wasn't familiar. And he got a great pop to it. I mean, everybody booed whoever touched him in the Rumble.
But it's not a vacuum. WWE has this egotistical, we are the big leagues and nobody else exists. AJ Styles has been out there forever.
Yes,
He's a world-class, superstar. So is Nakamura. So is Samoa Joe. So is Austin Aries. And, if NXT is the quote-unquote farm system, why are these guys even there? These guys are better. I'm watching WWE. WrestleMania is going to be 7 hours. Raw feels like 7 hours. You're watching The Miz.
Oh,
you're watching The Miz. You're watching the same guys over and over and over. I don't need to see Mark Henry or The Big Show. I've seen him for 42 years already. It's like enough. It's like how do you not have Finn Balor on the main roster? Either it's the minor leagues, the farm system, or it's just an alternate promotion. You can't have it both ways.
I think personally, it now has turned itself into an alternate promotion.
Well, that's what it has to be.
Because Finn Balor and many others don't want to be on the main roster. They want to make that money, but they don't want to be on the roster because of all the love that they're getting. Even Bayley, the last of the 4 horsewomen, is not on the roster. So, with the WWE, I say this all the time, is that people can complain, whine, cry about Raw, and SmackDown, which SmackDown to me improved a small bit with the announcer.
Mauro Ranallo.
Yes.
He is a great old school announcer. Not only does he know what he's talking about, he's telling you about title changes,
Yes.
he's telling you about New Japan. You know, Jerry Lawler and these guys are just winging it. Which is fine because Jerry Lawler is a great talker.
They made him heel.
But sometimes it's just inane chatter. I listen to
Yes.
What's his name, Layfield. I listen to this guy and it's just like there's no substance. It's just, for the most part, it's just chatter. And
well, again, it starts and ends with Vince. I mean, to tell you the truth, you have Ronaldo on SmackDown, nobody on Raw. I give JBL a bit of a pass because of his character. Also, you have Corey Graves on NXT, who is excellent. Who
when I watch those guys on the pre-shows for the pay-per-views, Graves and again, it's just chatter. Booker T. It's just, I mean, it's like, come on. Gordon Soley could make a TV match feel like the World Series and the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying?
And he would be hammered at the same time.
Well, that I don't know, but whatever.
Well, there were the Gordon Soley drunk stories, and he would still tell the match as is, like a 5-star classic.
There's a Gordon Soley, there's a Jim Ross, there's a Mauro Ranallo, and then you have guys that they're treating it as a cartoon.
What about Matt Striker?
Matt Striker's a good announcer. Matt Striker, again, he does his homework. He knows what he's talking about, and he's a wrestler.
See what you and I are talking about here, and I would say this live and direct. Excuse the hip hop term. It is boring to the fan, to the typical WWE fan. A pro wrestling fan, we can take those guys and we can listen to them all day because they make the most crappiest match worth something. But when you have the inane chatter of Michael Cole and Byron Saxton and John Bradshaw Layfield, it turns you off to the point where you can just mute it and you could just watch the match in silent. And
you know what I do? I have the TV behind me. I'm on the computer, and I just turn around when they go, here's Kevin Owens or here's Cesaro, somebody I actually want to watch. I could watch a WWE 3-hour show in 20 minutes for the most part. Owens I enjoy, Cesaro I enjoy, obviously AJ Styles. There's a few that's worth your time, and others, it's just...
The only thing you need to watch is the beginning and what happens in the end, and you will know everything.
I don't need to hear Stephanie and Triple H do a 20-minute monologue ever again. It's been done to death.
I tell you the truth. It was done for me at when they did it at pay-per-views. When the pay-per-view starts, it usually be match 1 up until match 8, maybe a little 1-minute promo in the back. But now they're coming out with 15, 20-minute promos in the beginning, and I'm like, I could be, well, not the Barry, but I could be in the bathroom right now instead of waiting to see what's the first.
A lot of times I do like chores around the house so my wife doesn't berate me. So Triple H is talking. It's like, okay, let me help her with the dishes. I'll come back when Owens is wrestling.
And then you can go on Facebook and it's like, Triple H said this, Triple H said that. Move on to the other match.
It's not exactly profound. It's but. I'm going to give you the shtick that people give me. You're a very spiritual guy.
Thank you.
What makes you...
hands a little bit.
Yeah. What makes you love pro wrestling? I mean, well, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us about the beads.
Oh, the prayer beads that you show. I am a Zen person, and coincidentally today, March 19th, is Nowruz in the Baha'i Faith, which is like a new year to us. So that's why, in the way I dressed up, put the beads on. But also for me, I love pro wrestling because as a kid I hated boxing, and two guys in the ring with gloves just hitting each other until Mike Tyson came out and they made it exciting 1-round matches, 2-round matches, and then I see guys in wrestling that they would get beat up like 1 week and then turn around and they would get beat up the same week. They would just keep coming back, and knowing me getting older, I found out they were taped. They would tape like 4 shows in one day.
Right.
So it was just the colorful characters that came out. It was the mini characters because I never seen it in boxing. Now boxing is slowly, or it has gone today. I remember Prince Nassim Hamed.
Yeah.
And he had the robe and he had the music, and Mike Tyson just had nothing but music and a towel.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah, it's more of a show today.
So now it just never leaves me because of the spectacle of it.
So as a spiritual, religious, whatever the case may be, do you ever look at wrestling and go, "This is just too violent. It's too offensive. It's too sexist"?
Honestly, I did during the Attitude Era. I was never really. As a teenager, you see women with skimpy outfits, so it was given as a teenager. But now as an adult, it's like, would you let your kids watch this? Women openly flashing in arenas and guys pulling their pants down.
You want to know my reaction with the women? I don't care how pretty they are. I don't care how much cleavage they're showing. I just want to see good wrestling. And if it's not good wrestling, I'm not interested. I would rather watch a Gail Kim, who's a quality wrestler and also attractive. So that's a total package.
Exactly.
But if you gave me a choice between the Bella Twins and, let's say, a Sarah Del Rey, I'll watch Sarah Del Rey any day of the week because you're watching a world-class wrestler.
Why is she a trainer? She should be. I feel
Of
like
course,
she should be wrestling
because the emphasis is the Playboy playmates with the skimpy outfits, and with that's what they feel is going to sell. But I'm an old school wrestling fan. I go back to the Moolah days, and Moolah was not going to win any beauty pageant, but Moolah had legit heel heat.
Yes.
Moolah would come into the Garden in the 70s, and they hated her.
Yes.
I mean, she was the real deal. Okay, so there's you talk about the diva revolution. If you could name 10 great diva matches, I can't. I'm not asking you to do it. I don't want to take the next half hour.
If you say no NXT, I couldn't name it for you. If you said no NXT, no New Japan, I couldn't name it to you. Maybe like 2 knockout matches and that'd be it. But honestly,
I enjoy Gail Kim every time I see her. I wouldn't say any of these I'm going to remember 20 years from now. It's not Flair and Steamboat again,
Well, women's wrestling has a big flack. Back in the day, they weren't getting paid. Moolah would do her thing, but she wouldn't get as paid as much. Now the women are doing mixed martial arts training and BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it is more. And I'm a technical wrestling fan, by the way. Is more enjoyable. So the skimpy outfits doesn't do anything for me because in the real street fight, the woman would lose her top in like a minute.
I've seen that on YouTube where you got some grotesquely disgusting 400-pound girl losing her clothes, brawling in the street, and I'm like, I didn't need to see this. I'm gonna go blind.
Can't be unseen.
That's right.
But really, I have a Facebook friend that he's a friend of mine in good life. Shout out to Historian Ed in Baltimore. He said watching the Divas now is more enjoyable than back then, because of the training. They have the looks and the training at the same time. All you have to do is let the promoter let them apply that training when they have their matches. I mean,
I'd rather watch the Japanese women wrestlers who are wrestling machines, a lot of them, than 19 out of 20 WWE Diva matches.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this. This is not my show, but I'm going to ask you as far as the craziness that is wrestling. What do you think about like Joey Ryan and his quote unquote claim to fame?
Interesting question. I love Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette, and the Midnight Express to me were the greatest tag team combination ever.
Which one?
Which one? Both.
Which incarnation?
Both.
Okay.
I think Condrey was great in his own way, and I think Stan Lane was great in his own way.
Were there 3?
Yeah, there was an earlier that people kind of forget about. But Jim Cornette gets very offended when he sees something like Joey Ryan. For those who don't know, if you go on YouTube, he works his member into the match. I'll leave it at that. So,
I've seen it live at WrestlePro where he eliminated 12 people with it.
Now, again, even though I'm an old school fan, I am not offended. To me, it's so over the top when you were in the green room, I was talking to comedian Barry Ribs. I'm Jewish, and a Gilbert Gottfried will do Holocaust jokes, and I laugh because it's over the top. It's in character.
But he gets fired for Japan earthquake jokes.
Okay, well, but it's anyway. So Joey Ryan doing what really comes down to, shtick, comedy, quote unquote performance art. It doesn't offend me. Jim Cornette, it offends greatly, and he's stated that. So no, it doesn't bother me. What bothers me more is something that's ultra violent. Like I've seen things where like a guy will have something stuck through his tongue, and I'm like, that's really not wrestling. It's more like a geek show. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I respect that the guy's willing to subject himself to that to entertain. I'm not going to do that. But,
well, it wasn't a wrestler with Necro Butcher and Staples. And,
I love Necro Butcher, but again, now he's not a kid. And what has he done to his body? And was it worth the financial payoff? Probably not. Mm-hmm. And somewhere there was a guy who was just plain wrestling who did not subject himself to that kind of punishment. And Necro Butcher's a friend of mine. We worked together on The Wrestler for the longest time, and I have nothing but respect for him. But personally, I would not subject my body to that. Someone says, "I'll give you $1 million to fall off the ladder. Let's go." But for a couple for a couple $100, I'm not going to do it.
It's just that now that it's a cast of characters in wrestling, there's another guy who's very, very critical about the product, and to me, it's just that just enjoy what they give you. Some characters offend me too. Like years ago, Chavo Guerrero dressed up as Kerwin White. Disgracing his Mexican heritage. Crime Time used to offend me until they turned it into a goof act. I'm friends with JTG, and I told him that, but he was making his money.
What do you think? What do you think of New Day? I think
they just started. The last time I was here, I like them now as opposed to when they first started. When they first started, they wanted to be black preacher wrestlers, preaching about positivity and smiling. It was like blackface and black people. And I didn't like that. Then when the crowd booed them, they at least they listened, or Vince McMahon let them listen. And then they turned into a goofy trio of oddball black guys, nerds, which there are black nerds in the world. I like it. The Booty-O cereal, I think it's hilarious. But, now the fans are getting behind it, and it's hard being heel. So you see they're turning them faces slowly.
I enjoy New Day, but at some point it's got to be more match than shtick. I want to see, again, it always goes back to I want to see a quality match. If they're out there for 12 minutes and they're talking for 6, no. Recently, they had a very good match. I forget the opponents, but, where I said that was an excellent match.
I'll tell you a story about New Day. And I was in the Baltimore arena with my friend Evan, another Evan in Baltimore. And they were heels. So we had this lady behind us saying, "I hate New Day," such and such and such. We find it entertaining that the crowd is engaged with that. So that's my thing about being heels. But when Xavier Woods pulls that trombone out, they do the stomp and he plays the trombone. Yeah. And then when he does that long draw, it's like, he kicks him and the whole arena laughs. And I just said, they just apparently lost it. Because in my heart, in my soul, being a heel in wrestling, you're supposed to be hated. I remember
I agree.
In those days where Bob Orton and Rowdy Piper could not go anywhere without people picking on them.
Iron Sheik and Nikolai used to hide in the ambulance and leave in the middle of the show. They had such heat. They were scared they were going to get murdered. Yeah. So, we don't get that today quite as much.
Social media is killing it.
Yeah. We're going to take a very brief commercial timeout, and when we come back, we're going to talk more wrestling and work some music into the mix as well. So don't you dare go anywhere, folks. More of Legends TV with Shin-Blade and yours truly right after this.